First, let's have a listen to two of our eminent television broadcasters. Here's the sanctimonious Kay Burley from Sky News grilling a cabinet minister.
Everybody at home is screaming at the telly saying, it's one rule for us and it's one rule for them. And you're falling into that trap.
It certainly is, Kay. Let's move on to the Sky News' esteemed political editor, Beth Rigby, on her high horse, grilling rule-breaking government advisor Dominic Cummings.
This is meant to be the people's government, isn't it? But you've badly misjudged public mood on this. This hasn't damaged the Prime Minister. It has undermined your policy and it's undermined public confidence in the government. It could even now threaten public health if people decide that the rules don't matter. How can you even countenance at the moment staying on and not resigning?
Well, right back at you, Beth. I mean, those are two of Sky News' superstars banging on in their time-honoured fashion about the very important rules that we all have to obey during this coronavirus crisis. No broadcaster has been more pompous or sanctimonious about whether or not we should all do what we're told in these difficult times. Now, I'm not in the business of calling for people to be fired. I hate that. That's a Twitter lynch mob thing. But these two, because of Sky News's very high horse stand on this issue, surely they are in big trouble. Don't forget, Kay Burley and 9 of her Sky News mates went out for a posh dinner in London's West End on Saturday night. That's against the rules. She said, it was a COVID-friendly restaurant. It's not the point. You're not supposed to go out unless it's people in your same household, unless it's a business meeting. Last time I looked, a birthday bash is not a business meeting. She said her rule breaking involved nipping into another restaurant to spend a penny because she got caught short, neglecting to mention that she then took a crowd of her mates back to her place for more fun and frivolity. Illegal. Now, Sky News say that their brand has been seriously damaged by this activity, and you can see what they're talking about. They who live by the sword should maybe die by the sword, but as I say, I do not want this discussion to be about whether or not they get fired, but perhaps how Sky News get out of this situation. Let's talk to someone who wrote amusingly, typically, in The Sun in his column today, Rod Liddle. Hello, Rod.
Hello, mate. How you doing?
I'm very, very well. As I say, I can't stand calling for people to being sacked. It's pathetic and Twitterish. However, on a serious note, because of the way Sky News has behaved throughout this coronavirus, as in a high and mighty preacher to the public, you must do what you're told in this turbulent crisis. These 9 people from Sky News, particularly Kay Burley and the political editor Beth Rigby, have put their company in a very difficult position, haven't they?
Well, yeah, I'm sorry, and I know you don't like calling for people to resign, and nor do I. It happens too often, and usually for bad reasons. But I'm sorry, but if you call for somebody else to resign and then do much worse than what they did, you should resign. There's no argument about it, I wouldn't have thought. And no one argued at the time that Dominic Cummings was putting anyone else at risk. He was with his family when he went to the north, and even when he made his ill-judged trip to Barnard Castle to see if he was blind or not, if I remember rightly. As we all do when our vision's impaired.
Was it nip to the local castle, test your eyesight? It's a way of life.
Right. It's always what you do, yes. Specsavers in Barnard Castle. But he was with his own family. He didn't mix with anybody else. And here you have Ms. Burley and Ms. Rigby. Burley seems to me to have broken the COVID restrictions on at least 3 counts, if not 4. I just do not see how you can keep a straight face and say, no, I have no intention of resigning. It's just bizarre.
Yeah, Kay Burley tried to say that her one mistake was nipping into a nearby restaurant after the earlier frivolities because she got caught short. I think we'd all forgive anyone for that. However, the whole notion of the evening, you aren't allowed, 10 of you are not allowed to gather in a restaurant for a party. So So there are these employees of Sky News who have been preaching the rules with a dreary monotony for the past year or so, or 8 months or so, just completely riding roughshod over the rule. So the party in itself was wrong, and then later on they went back to Kay's place. They have broken the rules left, right, and centre.
Yes, they have done that, and you would expect. I would have expected at least one of them to have resigned by now. I don't like Sky News very much. I think it's pompous, sanctimonious. I don't like Sky Sports much better either. It's also pompous and sanctimonious. I don't have time for either of them. But it has become something that celebs do, which is break the COVID rules and then issue a fatuous apology. So Kay Burley issued a non-apology apology for what she'd done by saying she just went to the lavatory in a restaurant, which wasn't the point at all and wasn't the main charge against her. And she said it was an error of judgment. It wasn't an error of judgment. You knew what you were doing, Burley. You knew exactly what you were doing. You wanted to have a birthday party and you weren't going to let anything stand in your way. There was no error of judgment about it. It's just what you do. But we had the same thing with Rita Ora, who I think has broken the lockdown restrictions twice. And in fact, it's rare for a week to go by without a Premier League footballer being caught with a couple of whores, which is, I think, not merely breaking the lockdown restrictions, but it's also a dubious morality. I mean, it's every week. And I think more what it highlights is just that there is a tranche of people in this country who think that the rules don't apply to them, who think they're above the rules, and they have no intention of abiding by them.
I'll tell you one thing, Rod. When your company lets it be known that its brand has been damaged by your behaviour, you are in big trouble. And that is what Sky has said through the grapevine to the BBC and to other broadcasters about its attitude to Kay Burley's 60th birthday party. So my question to you, given that, is can Kay Burley, Beth Rigby and the other on-screen, in fact, Sky employees, seriously return after Christmas?
Well, I would have thought that by their own lights, no, certainly not in the case of Kay Burley, given what she's actually said. I think they'll probably be a bit more lenient on the others, although even then, Beth Rigby, you knew what you were doing. I think one of the guys actually drove 200 miles down from a Tier 3 area into a Tier 2 area, which is another breaking of the rules, and presumably Kay Burley must have invited him, unless people just turned up willy-nilly to cheer Kay Burley.
I don't think so, Rob, because Adam Boulton clearly was not invited.
Invited, was he?
Well, he retweeted.
That's what drove him to those comments.
He retweeted a tweet that said, "Look at these morons preaching to us all summer, and this is how they behave." So he clearly endorses the view that, if nothing else, Kay, Beth and the gang behaved moronically. But I think it's more than moronic. I think they were very stupid to do it, but it's just seriously smacks of one rule for the people and one rule for us, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it does, yeah, and I think there is that view amongst our celebrities. I don't have any doubt about that. But I think it's also terribly difficult for both Beth Rigby and Kay Burley in future to challenge politicians on some grievous policy or some U-turn or a mistake or whatever. The politician can simply return to Kay Burley or Beth Rigby and say, "Well, we all make mistakes, don't we, Kay? We all make mistakes, Beth. A little apology for it, and that should be enough, shouldn't it?" And she has no comeback.
That's exactly right. The news editor of Sky will be holding his head, or her, I don't know if it's a he or a she, he said carefully, will be holding their head in their hands because for that very reason, these people have seriously undermined themselves journalistically. Every minister in the cabinet will now be thinking, in the past, I feared going before ruthless Kay and her hard-line questioning. Now, if she says, "Why have you done that? Why have you not obeyed your own rules? Why have you not?" They'll just say, "Well, what about you?" Journalistically, it puts them in an almost impossible position.
It does. It does in those terms. It does in the terms of challenging politicians, which is, of course, how they both made their name. And as you say, with such wonderful sanctimony every time they do it. And this is, of course, a problem. It's a problem for all journalists. You know, we try to hold politicians to a far higher standard than we live our own lives, frankly, which is why
say that again.
Yeah, well, it's why I'm always a bit wary of making charges on that basis. But no, I would have thought it was very difficult for them. But you know, we have a celebrity culture where celebrities are fated, and they have come to live in a kind of gilded situation that they are completely different to the rest of the country. And you see that with the footballers, you see it with actors, pop stars, and increasingly members of the media. You know, they think they're above it all, and they're not.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point, isn't it? You know, Kay Burley and Beth, they are the Rita Oras of the news business now. And Rita Ora kind of demonstrated, as you suggested earlier, perfectly the celebrity approach to the lockdown rules. It's break them and then apologise humbly, saying a terrible error of judgment. It won't happen again.
They always say error of judgment, don't they?
Yeah, and then do it again almost immediately.
And then do it again, yes.
And then the BBC says, hey, look, or ITV, I can't remember what channel it's on. We've got Rita for The Masked Singer. I mean, the corporations like the BBC or Sky don't often seem to make a stand on this either, do they?
No, they don't. And it's also, of course, footballers. I can't remember how many times Kyle Walker's broken lockdown. Probably more times than he's played for England, I suspect. And they all do it. It's difficult. It's difficult for Sky, isn't it? Because they have Adam Boulton, who is their biggest name. But Kay Burley is undoubtedly up there. And it is a real trial for them. Do they actually bite the bullet, or do they think, as I suspect they may be thinking, oh, bit of days,
I don't think it'll blow over, Rod. I really don't. I thought it would begin to blow over fairly quickly because no one watches Sky News. You know, Kay Burley, their flagship show presenter, apparently on a good day manages 90,000 viewers. I mean, and the reason for that is if you pump out absolute rubbish, people won't watch it. So the Sky News, I think, used to be a good outfit. Now it just broadcasts boring orthodoxy. And that's why they're flailing. So I don't think this one will blow over because ordinary people, I hate to use that term, but people, shall we say, who aren't stars, who aren't in the media, hate to see these people acting as if they're entitled and privileged and can break the rules. While we're talking about the lockdown, Rod, I know that you and I kind of agreed. The first lockdown, I think, was necessary and certainly excusable because nobody knew what we were dealing with. We were in uncharted territory. We went into 3.5 months. I don't blame the government for that. I've been blaming the government for lockdowns ever since. Let's think about the lockdowns and the tier systems all over the country. What happens is these various governments of our disunited kingdom impose upon us tier 3, lockdown, firebreak, curfew, what's the other one? Circuit breakers, and they never ever work. And when they don't work, they say, well, it's your fault, people, you're breaking the rules. When do you think they might even contemplate considering that it isn't the rule breakers? It might just be that lockdowns and fire breakers and circuit breakers don't work. They're like First World War generals, aren't they? Let's send 1 million blokes over the top of the trench to get shot immediately. Oh, that didn't work. Let's do it again. Let's try it again. Let's try it again. When are they going to consider that their lockdown policies don't work?
Yes, it's very interesting. There was a brilliant cartoon a month or so ago, which had a picture of Boris Johnson dressed up in a kind of Trobriand Islander native costume. And behind him on this plinth, there was a COVID vaccine with its spikes coming out. And Johnson was saying, he is angry. We must bring him more northerners. One of the best cartoons I think I've seen this year. And it has tended to be the poorest parts of the country which have copped it worst as a consequence of this. It doesn't work. I remember how smug the Welsh were for a bit.
Well, they're fire break.
When there was a circuit break, they had a circuit break for 2 weeks.
Disaster.
Utter disaster. And I don't think any of this stuff works. This kind of hokey-cokey approach really doesn't work, that 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It hasn't worked so far. And of course, the same thing's going to happen this Christmas. There will be a huge spike by about January the 5th, and there will be calls to put us back into full lockdown again.
Yes, exactly. London, they're talking about the 17th. That's going to be a nightmare, obviously, for the pubs, but also for the theatres, which after virtually a year are finally coming out of darkness, and now they might lock them down again. It's almost as if they want all these establishments to close down, which is a tragedy. Rod, thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure. Rod Liddle, their columnist at The Sun and The Spectator and The Sunday Times. You name it, he writes for them.